Poxy Seal is our vinyl resin that is a sealer and an adhesive or a glue with a thick consistency, so a little bit goes a long ways, and it can be used for so many things. I'm using Poxy Seal on this tumbler to seal my vinyl striping here, my metallic vinyl striping, so that there's no lifting when I go to epoxy. And as you notice, I only put one application of Poxy Seal on here, and then I can spread it throughout all over the whole tumbler. So a little bit goes a long ways. And then I allow this to dry for about 25 minutes in my room temperature of about 75 degrees. And then I'm able to go right in and epoxy. Now this tumbler right here, I already put the vinyl striping sealed Poxy Seal under epoxy. So now I am sealing the printable vinyl pictures that I put on top, and then I'll epoxy, and then I'll put vinyl picture frames around them, and then I'll seal again, and then epoxy again. The purple and pink glitter was also applied with Poxy Seal. I just mixed a little bit of pink or purple acrylic paint in with the Poxy Seal to stick the glitter. And here is the first tumbler, completely dried with Poxy Seal. It dries clear. Here's the second tumbler. There's no bubbles or white or anything, so I know my Poxy Seal is dry, so that when I go to epoxy, I don't have any micro bubbles that decide to congregate on top of my printable vinyl like it always does when you don't seal, and nothing's gonna lift when I'm applying the epoxy either. And here is, I'm using the bottoms up method to apply my epoxy. I'm using Tumbler Epoxy 2.0. I love the thickness of 2.0, but because it's a fast set, you do need your room temperature up to at least 75 degrees. The warmer, the better. And then make sure you're fully mixing for 4 full minutes because it's so thick. And make sure between tumblers you give your batch of epoxy a quick stir. That way some of your tumblers don't cure properly or dry properly and the other ones are still tacky. If you're having that problem, that's why. You got to the bottom of the batch and it wasn't stirred all the way, so it wasn't stirred properly when you put it on the tumbler. But I'm doing my bottom up method on here to conserve on my epoxy, and I'm just making sure that I get the handle and everything properly. I don't want to miss any spots, because the next step on this tumbler is to put some cute little picture frames around the pictures so that they don't look so uniform and square. Bottoms up method with this tumbler as well. I did mix the batch of epoxy before I started recording. That way it's sitting from me coating the other tumbler. That way the one tumbler doesn't come out non-tacky and this one does. Make sure you're mixing your batch between tumblers. A heat gun works best for 2.0 because it's so thick, but if you use the bottoms up method, then you don't have to worry about that many micro bubbles. I'm basically just heating these at this point just to make sure that the epoxy levels out before it dries. Perfect glass-like finish. None of the vinyl is lifting because I sealed it with Poxy Seal. This next tumbler, I'll let this coat dry. There's no micro bubbles over the picture or the vinyls. I'll let this layer dry. I'll put some cute vinyl frames around the pictures. I'll seal again with Poxy Seal, let it dry, and then epoxy. The purple and pink glitter were also applied with Poxy Seal with acrylic paint. So many uses for Poxy Seal.